Hey everyone, thanks for joining. My name is Will and I'm one of the co-organizers of Toronto Travel Massive and content creator behind Going Awesome Places. It's great to see so many of you guys join the stream today, and I think more are streaming in. First off, where are you guys joining from? I'm at home here north of Toronto in Ontario in Canada. But if you can't tell from all the mosquito bites, I actually just got back on the grid from going off the grid in the Canadian wilderness. Hit us up in the chat and let us know where you're at right now. So a few housekeeping notes, comments. Drop your comments in the Travel Massive platform and on Facebook. So ask away anything you want to ask for this awesome panel that we have. We'll be doing an overall Q&A at the end of the live show. Recordings, they will be available on the Travel Massive platform afterwards. So don't worry if you need to head off in the middle, or if you want to rewatch something later on, they'll be posted on this event page. So today, I'm really excited because for Travel Massive Live, we are going to be doing an amazing panel session all about sustainable travel. To tackle this subject, we put together an amazing expert panel that spanned different segments and expertise as well. So let's not waste any time and jump right in. I have Lauren, and she blogs over at Justin Plus Lauren and Ontario Hiking. She's a huge advocate for sustainable travel and a longtime member of Toronto Travel Massive. When I thought about who to run this show, I couldn't think of anyone better to do it. So welcome, Lauren.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm streaming here from Mississauga, Ontario, which is really close to Toronto. And yeah, I'm a content creator and travel blogger at justinpluslauren.com and the new ontariohiking.com, which I've started in the last couple of months. I focus on something that I like to call adventure and kind travel, which involves outdoor adventures and being kind to people, the planet, and animals when I travel. I love promoting travel that is sustainable and responsible, which is all what this chat is going to be about. So if you've been curious about incorporating eco-friendly travels into your plans, or you just want to be a more responsible traveler, then this panel is for you. So I'd love to introduce or allow some of the other panelists to introduce themselves so you can learn what they're all about. We have some amazing other panelists here from the travel sector. So let's bring in everybody. Hey.
Hey.
Yeah, feel free to introduce yourselves.
Okay, we'll get started. So we are Oksana and Max, and we run a sustainable travel blog called Drink Tea and Travel. Today we're broadcasting from Dundas, Ontario, which is a small town about an hour outside of Toronto. And our blog is all about sustainable travel. Normally we travel for about 9 months of the year, so we're fairly nomadic. And we visit destinations with an aim to promote sustainable travel and make a positive impact on the communities and destinations that we visit. When we're not traveling, you can usually find us in Costa Rica, which is our semi-home base. We own and help operate a sustainable travel lodge there called Driftaway Eco Lodge.
And currently right now, we pivoted because of the COVID-19 situation, and we're building a van. And our plan is to build our own custom van and travel around Ontario and finally get to check out some of our native country and some of the spots that we can try to highlight to some of our readers.
Fabulous. I'm Nora. I'm a co-founder of Animal Experience International. What we do is we get people to travel on safe, ethical, and authentic animal volunteer programs. So Lauren has actually been on 2 with us. She went to Kenya and then to Guatemala. And so it's everything between going to Mongolia and helping the scientists there with the conservation of wild horses, to what we did in Guatemala, which is the rehabilitation of trafficked animals, and everything in between. So I've been really lucky to go on all the programs before people go on them first to make sure that they are safe, they are authentic and responsible. So I have a lot of background in going to really amazing places and seeing amazing things and going to amazing places. And as Jules and Christine can say, making some mistakes along the way.
Yes, so we are Christine and Jules. We are joining you from San Francisco, California today, and we run the travel blog Don't Forget to Move, which is an adventure, travel, and responsible tourism blog. We split our time between San Francisco, Melbourne, which is Jules' hometown, and Bali, and then also travel around the States in our van and travel the world pretty much usually. And we just focus on ethical animal tourism activities, traveling sustainably, traveling locally, traveling authentically, and how you can have a positive impact instead of a negative impact on the places that you visit.
Yep. And we're also at the podcast Not So Bon Voyage, where we tell weekly stories about when things go wrong on the road. And so you can always check in and hear when you're not traveling, you can find some good travel, maybe not inspiration, but some lessons anyway.
Including Nora's story, which we just told on our most recent episode. It's a good one.
I love that. Okay, well, let's get right to it. And we'll start with the first question. I'm basically going to be asking a series of questions to our panelists, and we'll just be talking about them. And then we'll open it up to some Q&A at the very end. So feel free to post your questions if you have any for us, and we'll get to them at the very end. So the first question, what does sustainable travel mean to you, and why is it important?
All right. So for us, sustainable travel actually is defined in 3 different pillars. So the first one is sort of environmental aspect of sustainable travel, being kind to the earth, being responsible in the ways that, everything from water bottle usage and making sure that we eat sustainable food and everything that has to do with earth and environmental respects.
Yeah, so that green portion of travel is very important. That's our first pillar. Our second pillar is economic. So whenever we try to focus on sustainability and when we try to promote sustainability, we really try to push people to use small vendors, local families, anyone that's not a big corporate business that can really use the tourism dollars that are needed. Too often we see in the industry that people just go for what's convenient, what's easiest, and what's cheapest. And that's not always what's best for the local communities that are in that area. So we really try to include that portion, which is the economic stimulus of certain areas that specifically rely on tourism, especially in these hard-hit times. The third pillar is the cultural heritage of trying to upkeep and trying to maintain the cultural authenticness of that area that we're going to. We really try to make sure that where possible, where that's a very big issue, that we try to highlight and promote that and make sure that some of those customs are kept, promoted, and really addressed so that people can understand it, not just from the culture they're coming from, but to understand the culture they're going into and how to respect that when they travel.
Awesome. Ours are actually pretty similar in the sense that we've always talked about 3 pillars being the people, the animals, and the environment. And they're the 3. And a lot of those fall into yours as well. So for us, it means not negatively impacting people, places, and animals that we interact with while we travel. It also means putting in the practices that help support fair and equitable environment for the destinations that we visit, and ultimately working towards leaving the world in a better place for future generations, for travelers, so that our kids and grandkids can enjoy the world like we have, and helping support that.
Yeah, and I would say the exact same thing. 3 pillars. Animal Experience International is a B Corp, and so what that means is we have shown a quantifiable benefit to the planet and the communities that we're working in, and so much of everything that I do is thinking about just the consequences that travel has, and hoping that they are beneficial consequences. Or benefits, because consequences doesn't sound great, rather than negative ones. And so thinking about those 3 pillars is really important. And then I would also add sort of a 4th pillar, which is safety, both mental health and physical health, the traveler as well. So you are having a safe and great time. But also, we're in a pandemic, and responsible and ethical, sustainable travel is making sure we're not traveling right now, and we're doing the best for us and the communities around us.
Wonderful. Okay, moving on to the second question. How can travel bloggers, tour operators, and those working in the tourism industry act as positive role models when it comes to traveling responsibly and sustainably?
So, as travel bloggers, we take very seriously our power to influence other travelers, and how we can use that power to like positively affect how people travel and travel more sustainably. So, what we try to do is prioritize destinations, operators, hotels, and other travel vendors that will promote that message to our audience so that we can not only encourage people to travel sustainably, but also educate our audience. Because I think a lot of people kind of just assume that sustainable tourism has to be this grandiose, like all or nothing type thing where you have to have all the gear and all everything. But really, like very small steps can lead you to be a more sustainable traveler. And I think we'll get to that in later questions. But for us as travel bloggers, it's sometimes a fine line because we do want to get those beautiful shots and those great photos and videos and go off the beaten track. But if we do that and then geotag it on Instagram, then we're encouraging other people to do the same thing. And if one person goes off the beaten track, it may not have a huge impact. But then if all of our followers start doing that, then it can have a really negative impact on the local environment. So for us, it's just, taking that responsibility very seriously and trying to be a positive role model.
I love that. And yeah, I think whenever we take a picture and we look around, we realize that picture is for us, but it's also for the people that are looking at our pictures. And so, we all kind of know in an age of Instagram and everything going online, if you do something, that almost means other people can do it as well. And I think something that's so important to think about is consent and how important that is with animals, with people, with yourself and the people you're traveling with. And so I think when looking at geotag locations or looking at the things you're doing when you're traveling, asking if the area itself is consenting to thousands of people seeing that picture so thousands of people can go there, if the animals are able to leave that area, if the people really want their picture to be taken. I think we have this responsibility. Maya Angelou has an amazing quote that once we know better, we can do better. And I think so much of us having our lives on display means we have to know better so other people can do better as well.
And I actually love something Christine said. So I'd love to just add to that in terms of, sustainable travel can seem like this big and thing that's only accessible to those with premium prices and whatnot. And just from a sort of tour operator and our example hotel operator perspective, it has been fascinating to learn how easy it is to become an eco hotel that has sustainable practices without investing a lot of money. So usually we think, eco hotel, some luxury place that you have to pay $500 a night for. But as a small operator, we've been able to implement so many small changes like water bottles that are reusable and, filtration systems and green gardens in our hotel, and small things that many operators can do to showcase that they support sustainable travel and that they encourage their travelers to travel in this way as well. So we would encourage all the operators to think creatively of how can you be more sustainable in your operations without spending a ton of money on, certifications and expensive improvements.
But there's often a good step that they can take. Each country has their own green certification standards. And even if the hotel operator or tour operator is not going to go through the whole process, which could be a year to 3 years to actually get certified, it's very easy to download the PDF checklist of some of the things they look for and just seeing which of those you can implement. Because hotels and tour operators often find there's lots of things they can implement very quickly that really can make a drastic change. But often it just takes a little bit of initiative to go and find what those practices are and to just start the ball rolling with some of these processes.
I love that. I think that because people are more interested in sustainable travel, especially moving forward after going through a global pandemic, there's lots of ways that hotel operators and tour operators can incorporate sustainable practices. And I think that will only really help you moving forward. And especially if they're easy to implement some things moving forward, that's fantastic. So this question, I want to know, what are your favorite eco-friendly or sustainable tourism destinations and why?
So I wouldn't say that I have specific destinations. I think I love travel. I love lots of different places. But I think, so instead of saying a specific place, I always have a checklist in my head. Like I said before, consent is important. And so I always make sure whenever I go somewhere, I make sure that the leadership in that area is local, and its local problems are solved by local solutions. And so I've been super lucky to be able to volunteer on about 7 different sea turtle programs. And each one was super different because there are problems with sea turtles that are really unique to each area. And so what I've learned from all these different sea turtle programs is every single country around the world has amazing people doing incredible things for the environment, for their community, for their specific ecosystems, and finding those people are really important. So you can have like a really authentic experience that is really helping the community members and the animals, but then looking around and saying, well, how is me being here affecting negatively and positively the area? So I can make better decisions, and I can really help this area, which will help everyone else.
That's a great way of looking at it. For us, we actually had a really fun challenge that we set off for ourselves about a year and a half now. We actually created a list of top 50 most sustainable destinations. So we basically looked all around the world, and just using our 3 pillars, we've identified what are the destinations that we think, just from kind of reading online and learning more about the destinations, what are the destinations that are doing the best? And we've set out this challenge to visit all of these destinations. So we visited maybe 15 out of the 50 so far. Obviously COVID had a bit of an interruption in our plans. So there's lots of destinations on our list, but I'll let Max talk about his favorite.
Yeah, so I'm a little biased. I grew up in Costa Rica, so one of my favorite sustainable destinations is still Costa Rica. I think they're doing very wonderful things there, and it starts from the government down. The government's very concentrated, and they're very focused on trying to make Costa Rica a green, sustainable destination. It starts literally from the top down, from the president's office all the way down. Not perfect, like by any means. There's no country, there's no tourism board, there's nothing that's an actual perfect sustainable destination, but they're doing a lot of what they can in terms of using renewable resources for a lot of their electrification in the country. I know the big craze for Americans and Canadians going down to Costa Rica was holding a sloth. You know, like obviously a lot of people go to Australia, they like to hold the koalas. In Costa Rica, it was holding the sloth, and Costa Rica banned that. They looked at that kind of practice and they said they don't want to be doing that. That's not what they want to be known for, and they don't want that type of tourism. So I think just last year they banned the practice of doing that, and just taking steps like that where it's easy to take that money from the tourists, being a developing nation, but they're really looking at the long-term effects of tourism on the country, and they're really trying to attract a type of consumer to the country that is going to be mindful of the environment when they come, which is great.
Awesome. We'll have to check out that list that you've got, try and tick a few off. Costa Rica comes to mind, but like Nora said, I feel like we have less sort of destination. It's more about specific operators and the way that people conduct their business. And so I feel like any destination can have eco-friendly aspects, obviously, depending on the policies and practices that stream down from the top-down government down to local municipal governments. It can be easier for certain destinations or regions to be more sustainable. But really anyone can do it. So, prioritizing local hotels so the money stays back into the country, eat at local restaurants, attend small groups that are organized by local tour guides and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. And as sustainable tourism bloggers, we have unfortunately seen a lot of greenwashing. So whether that's from a destination or hotel that puts on this facade that they're super eco-friendly, and then you poke a little behind the scenes and you realize it's just kind of more just for show. So just doing our homework, we've had to, really research and find places that are truly eco-friendly. And yeah, like Jules said, it's less about the destination for us and more about those specific operators and hotels and restaurants, and prioritizing putting our money to them so that we can, have a positive impact on those locations.
I think that's really important, the greenwashing and looking through the greenwashing, because a lot of places, anyone can say they're a sanctuary, but are they actually a sanctuary, or are they just trying to profit off of a sustainable travel trend? So it's really important, I think, that you do your research. You can read a lot of great travel blogs written by, sustainable travelers, or travel with companies that you can trust, like AEI, which is why I always do my trips with AEI, because I know that they're all vetted by Nora and they all do a lot of real good. Okay, so moving along, in a post-COVID-19 world, which we're all waiting for, when we can return to traveling, are there any aspects of travel that you hope will become unpopular due to their negative impacts on people, the planet, and animals?
Yeah. So obviously this is quite a contentious question, because there are lots of parts of tourism that all of us as sustainable travelers and bloggers would like to change. For us, one of the big ones, and I'm sure it is repeated amongst all of us, is big cruise ships. So these are the types of cruise ships that carry 5,000 people, that are constantly potentially dumping illegally in the ocean, dumping in the Caribbean, or going down to Antarctica. I think this mass tourism is what we would like to see change. I think that it's probably one of the things that's most ripe for change, because just the idea of having 5,000 people on a ship, or if it's not a ship, even if it's a 1,000 person or 1,000 room hotel and squishing people all in a buffet bar, that this idea of one solution that fits a lot of people for a cheap price is what we'd like to see kind of stopped and go away, and more bespoke travel tailored to what people's needs are, and more authentic experience. Because people that go on these big ships or go to these giant all-inclusives are not typically getting a true experience of that country. They're just going for cocktails, buffet, and just to get away from their current environment, where they don't necessarily always get the opportunities to interact with the local culture and to kind of experience what we think is one of the most important things of travel, is learning from the people in those other countries.
And that's not to say that all cruises are bad, right? There are a number of cruise operators that are smaller, that do have environmental practices, but majority of the cruise operators at the moment can certainly do with a bit more improvement.
Yes.
Yeah, good idea. So for us, we're seeing this trend, especially in the States, where we're not really allowed to travel internationally right now.
No one wants to have us.
No one wants us, which I totally understand. But we're seeing more domestic travel, which I think is awesome. And we hope that trend continues in the future, where people are exploring their own backyard, reducing their carbon footprint by not having international flights, and then also doing fewer big group tours and doing more independent exploring, because that's an amazing way to lower your negative impact when you're traveling. And also for us, like traveling independently without a tour, we've always enjoyed that form of traveling. And we think other people will enjoy it as well if they kind of break away from the comfort of having that big group. And yeah, we just hope that continues into the future. And then also we've seen a lot of destinations restricting how many people are allowed to visit a certain location per day, which is kind of a bummer if you don't, book a ticket in advance, but it will help that environment grow back, tenfold. So we hope that continues as well.
It is my great hope that after all of us have been through so much shelter in place and so much quarantine, that we look around at the animals and we say, hey, dolphinariums are not very good. And hey, wild animals that have been stolen from the wild and put into small enclosures, I know what that feels like now, and that sucks. And so I hope that we just have more empathy for animals, and we don't have entitlement over them anymore. And I would really like for us to go to the wild and, go on these safaris and see animals in the wild and go, yes, this is what it's supposed to look like. This is where they're supposed to be. It would also mean there would be way less animal trafficking. unfortunately, a trend that we have seen, because there are less people that are able to travel to these exotic locations, is trafficking has increased quite a lot in the pandemic. And that there's a number of reasons, but one of them is the exotic pet trade has gone up. People want to see animals and they want to see them in front of them. And unfortunately, where there is animal trafficking, there's also weapons, drug, and human trafficking. So this is obviously a huge problem. But if when we can start traveling again, I hope we have this empathy and we look and we go, wait, we felt like trapped animals. We don't need to have trapped animals around us. We want to be wild and free and, kind of away from other people. And that's what animals want as well. So that is my hope. More empathy.
It's really funny, as the pandemic started, that we all, as we're all at home, we started to see like, oh, all these animals are coming out without us here. Like, how amazing is that? They're like reclaiming the land. And it took like only a few days for that to happen, it seemed. So I really hope that people can start to appreciate that we all live on this planet together and we need to treat them properly. So moving on to question 5, this is kind of the opposite of what I just asked. So what kind of tours and activities and aspects of travel do you hope will thrive in the future?
Yeah, so pretty much the opposite of all the negative things we just talked about. So for us, definitely more small group tours, prioritizing authentic local guides, people who have an appreciation for the environment and the cultures and the people that they're a part of. And so really trying to promote that. And then definitely, especially more awareness for animal appreciation tours that don't impact the habitat or the physical or mental well-being. So making sure that we prioritize that. And I think, Nora, your sort of analogy of the lockdown of us being like the caged animals is a really, really powerful one to think of when you relate that to how animals feel and how we feel sort of trapped. And I think that's a really great thing for people to think of moving forward.
Yeah, and one thing we've learned from this whole experience is that we just took for granted how easily and how often we could travel pre-COVID. We could easily just like spend a week here and there and do this and that. And for us, it's just, and I think everybody, it's really just slowed everybody down. And we hope that in the future, people take travel, like really appreciate travel, and also just slow down on their travels. Travel is such a privilege. And the idea of just bouncing to all these locations and ticking off your bucket list gets so crazy. So we hope people can appreciate the idea of just going to one location, spending a good amount of time there, really getting to know it on a deeper level.
Connect with the culture.
Culture, appreciate that destination. And then just travel more slowly. We hope that will thrive in the future.
Oh, I love that. I love everything you said, just that. I totally agree. I think that it did feel so easy to go everywhere. So we could go everywhere and it could be really fast. And we could have this bucket list culture of just going here, tick it off, not actually seeing the local culture and authentically understanding. I think in this very strange time, we are also, I think, wonderfully in a civil rights movement. And the Black Lives Matter movement happening right now is so wonderful and important for travelers to acknowledge and say, yes, we need more diversity in travel. We need more diversity. We need to understand our privilege. We have to understand how entitled we were around the world for a really long time. Travel, unfortunately, has its roots deeply embedded in white normative culture. And I think this is a time for us, we all stopped traveling. We realized how privileged we were. And now when we can start traveling again, we can have that conversation of, this is such a privilege, and I really want to experience it in a slow way, in understanding the cultures that I am so privileged to see, and also having hands up and hands across to lots of other people that are diverse as well, and saying it's not just about us, it's about everyone. Hopefully we can all travel together.
And I think this experience has showed us just how interconnected this whole world is. And literally the choices you make in one part of the world affect, people of a whole different walk of life in the other part of the world. And that's important to stay aware of while we're traveling. All those little tiny decisions we make on a daily basis as travelers have huge global impact. So got to stay vigilant, guys.
Absolutely. If a virus can spread this quickly, then like good things can also spread this quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I think everyone just coming out of, hopefully soon, out of this COVID world has realized the impact that we all make on the environment, on the animals, and on nature, right? When we first got into lockdown, I don't know how many of you've seen, but all those stories of how pollution is going down in China and pollution is going down here, and just the earth is kind of taking that time to recover. So I think it's going to be hopefully more on people's minds that as we go out there, we respect the animals more and we respect the earth more. And especially now that people are choosing to spend more time outdoors because that is the safest place, I hope that they'll appreciate the environment around us a bit better.
Definitely. Okay, so the last question that I have for you guys, what are some easy ways that the average traveler can incorporate sustainable tourism into their trips?
So I think the number one thing is we don't know what we don't know. And so research is really, really important. I think it is awesome that so many people showed up today and they are still watching. And I think just, understanding that there's questions to ask and understanding that having a reusable water bottle is actually excellent. Like Christine said before, it's these little tiny things that actually make a huge difference. Like they really, really do. And so, and Oksana said this as well, it doesn't have to be you going to a $1 million resort. It's, looking locally and saying, what are locals doing and how does that help locals? And just asking a bit more questions, not just going somewhere and saying, I'm on vacation, it's fine, I'm doing whatever. Your travel can align with your values. And so if you don't have plastic bags at home, then why would you have them when you travel? And if you are, what is a crazy example? If you are not being mean to your cats in your apartment when they're being loud, then why would you be mean to cats on safari? So it's taking those steps and it's saying, my everyday life, I want to have the smaller footprint. I can still do it. It's just going to be a little bit more research, but that authentic travel is certainly worth it.
And just to build a bit on that as well is with the idea of this research, understand that any destination that you go to will have sustainable things to do. So if you want to travel locally in your own city, in your own town, there's sustainable things you can do. If you want to travel out of state or out of province, there are sustainable things you can do. If you want to go to another country, it might not be the most sustainable country, but there will be sustainable things there for you to do. And finding those sustainable things is what's really important in that research phase. And also just trying to support, the small players, the small families who are getting hit most by this, the people that run cafes who maybe can't apply for giant grants to the government to help support them. So that kind of stuff really can go a long way, especially in the world and climate we're living in right now.
I think as consumers in general, one of the most powerful things we can do is vote with our dollars. So when you're choosing a tour operator, a restaurant, a hotel, your choice and your money that you're spending with that operator is what really counts. Because if more of us will choose sustainable hotels, sustainable operators, we choose to support small local suppliers, that's the industry as a whole will see that as a trend. And when there is a trend, everybody starts to jump on the trend, and we'll see more and more hotels and more operators jump on this trend and try to do things more sustainably. So it kind of begins with us as travelers and consumers, and hopefully ends with an industry as a whole.
Yeah, love it. And just to build on that, the idea of it, that you're taking a vacation from your life, but not your values, and that you can continue to do those things that you do back home. It does take, you don't have to be overwhelmed by it as well. It does take a little bit more time and effort, but it's not something that you need to be all or nothing. You don't have to be, as Christine said earlier, the most sustainable traveler ever. just making those little conscious choices of when you go to places. So researching, where you can put your money that it will have an impact, or just doing the same principles and practices that you do at home to be conscious, and thinking about how that will impact the places that you go to, and doing the same thing.
Yep. So just simple changes like traveling slower, that can have a huge impact. You're using a lot less transportation. And then for us, we always just suggest for people to live like a local when you visit a destination. So staying at locally run independent hotels where the money is staying in that community, in that economy, because a lot of those larger chain hotels are foreign owned and the money is going right out of the country. And then eating at local restaurants, shopping at local shops, just getting to know people, chatting with locals, just having that respect, like we were saying with like Max and Oksana were saying with the 3 pillars, respecting the environment, respecting the local community, and respecting the local animal populations, so that we can just all support each other and thrive as a planet.
And that's where you find the best food, I think, as well.
Yeah,
when you eat like a local, and you go to a local spot and you see that there's no tourists there, like they know that's where you want to go. So not only will you help like positively impact the communities, but you'll also have a more enriched experience as well. So, I mean, that's what we should be looking to do as travelers, to change it up and to experience something. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, we always tell people, I think a lot of people think of eco-tourism and sustainable tourism as like a checklist of things that you are not allowed to do or can't do. But for us, traveling sustainably has enriched our travels and brought us so much more than if we had just been traveling like we had, many years ago. So yeah, participating in those activities, speaking with local people, eating at local restaurants, staying at local hotels, all of that have just enriched our travels so much.
Definitely. Well, that's amazing. So we have some great questions here that I'd like to get to. So I'll start with the first one. It's from Elisa. It says, how do you choose and decide if a local tourism operator is sustainable or not? Do you have a checklist or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. So for us, we typically try to do as much research as we possibly can. And I believe that we have an article on our website that help guide people in terms of what are the things they should be looking for when trying to select a sustainable tour operator or a hotel.
So usually we start by the very first thing you can do is you can go on their website and you can see if there's any pages on their website that talk about sustainability or any sort of responsible, ethical operations of their business. That's a great place to start. Now, don't be alarmed if there isn't, because a lot of the small operators do all the wonderful things, but they're just not savvy enough to kind of put it on the website. Don't even think that it's important. So if it's not on the website, we usually just ask questions, who do you employ? Is it local people or is it foreigners? How much do you pay them? Is it like fair wages? What kind of working conditions do they have? How do you treat animals? Do you allow your visitors to pet any wildlife or any animals or feed them? Because that's not usually an interaction that we support and we want to be a part of. And there's a number of other questions that you can ask and just see what the operator says. I mean, if they want your business, they're absolutely going to answer your questions. And that's where you'll find out who's actually greenwashing, because there's definitely a lot of that going on, and who's truly into it.
I think another great way is we live in a very easy way to manipulate reviews and things like that. But I think that even just taking the time to look at reviews can be really helpful, and looking for certain keywords. I mean, if it's somebody's, personal experience, like, oh, I didn't like the place or something like that, then, it's unrelated. But if you look through those bad reviews and you see something like they had a monkey in the cage in the reception, or they had something like that, then you can get these clues from people. And it is hard to filter through all those reviews, because there's still people who are saying that an elephant riding experience was a 5-star experience, unfortunately. But, if you do take the time to go through some of those negative reviews, you can see keywords and things like that for things that you want to try and avoid.
And I think also on the other side of that, looking at reviews and looking at pictures on the website, looking at positive reviews, saying, why did people like it? And some people will say, oh, I love this experience because I was able to hold a slow loris. And you go, not great.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
And looking at pictures as well, like you looking at animals, it's it's quite obvious to see if the animals are in distress or not. If people are riding on elephants and happy about it, then you go, okay, nope, that's not great. But then also culturally, if there's a lot of pictures on the website of kids or of sacred areas that people aren't supposed to be walking, or of people not dressed appropriately for the area or for where they're going, you can also know this might be more tourist facing than local facing. So you can kind of see their responsibility there. I always tell people to talk to cab drivers as well, because they know everything. And say, hey, I'm looking to do this thing. I'm looking to have like local food. And the first answer they'll always give is like the tourist, like, oh, you should go here. But then if you say, but I like spice, or, I'm really looking for this, they'll go, oh, really? You're looking for, okay. And then you can kind of get like, often it will happen that like, oh, well, this is my buddy, because we're all kind of in the tourism sector. So like my buddy, actually, this is where all the cab drivers go to eat. And if you want spice,
be prepared.
Be prepared. It will be local, but it will be
Yeah, we usually say, where do you go for lunch? I want to go where you go.
Yeah, just take me to where you're going. You're on lunch break?
Yeah.
All right, I'm coming with you.
Those are all some really important points, like checking the websites, checking reviews. And I think as travelers, we shouldn't be afraid to write our own reviews if they're positive and negative. I think that sometimes people will only write like negative reviews if they had a really bad experience, but I think that sharing all the positive ones are really important too. So just to inform other people. And I mean, from my own point of view of being a blogger, writing about things that it's not good to swim with dolphins. Like a lot of people didn't realize that wasn't a good thing because they saw it advertised as a tour they could take, and you love animals and you want to interact with them. So you're like, oh, how wonderful, I can swim with dolphins. But you don't really realize what the negative implications behind it, that these dolphins are taken from the wild and they don't want to be just swimming around in like a little cage and, playing with people all day. It's not natural. So I think it's really important to spread the good word. And I think that travelers have really gotten the word out about, riding elephants is bad. And a lot of people might not have thought that before, but now all the negative reviews have really shined a negative light on that experience. And people are, shying away from doing that now. So this kind of leads into another question we have. I'd like to hear more about some practical examples of greenwashing that you have experienced.
One we see all the time is when people say like no straws. And obviously there's a huge campaign around trying to stop plastic straws or like just water bottles. So a lot of times we'll see hotels call themselves or tour operators sustainable, and they'll just have like one facet of one portion that makes them sustainable. So they maybe have no plastic straws, but then you see them take out 100 water bottles for everyone, and you're just like, well, it's still plastic and it's still disposable and it's still probably going to end up in the same area. So it's when they try to take one thing and they try to use that.
They use the trend, right?
Yeah.
Like the trend is no straws, and so they're like, oh yeah, we're going to jump on the trend and not think about maybe other aspects that
the chemicals that we wash your sheets with,
Mm.
we put straight into the gray water, and it drains out to a drainage field, which may be affecting the whole ecosystem there. So a lot of times we see that part when we travel, and it's a little disconcerting, but we try to keep an eye. We especially try to keep an eye on it now since we started focusing a lot on sustainable travel.
For us, and I'm sure Nora can speak to this as well, is greenwashing in ethical animal experiences. So being in Southeast Asia, a lot more people are aware of the fact that it's not good to ride an elephant. But now what's happening is all these elephant sanctuaries are popping up, and for other animals as well. And so you see that word sanctuary and you think, oh, perfect. They're doing the good job. They have good values. But it's really just these buzzwords that these tour operators and hotels are latching onto and putting on their marketing material, and then hoping that people don't really peek behind the curtain and do their homework. So we see that a lot, especially with the animal, like elephant interactions. So it may say it's a sanctuary, but then they're still doing riding, but they've taken the saddle off.
Or they're still chained up
Or they're still chained up, they're still doing bull hooks, or you can still like get up, you know, in their personal space. So doing that extra step instead of just being like, oh, okay, this is a sanctuary, this is a good place, you know, really asking those tough questions like, how do people interact with these animals? What is their lifestyle like? How are they kept? What exactly will I be doing with them? And then if you ask those questions, you'll eventually find out the information you need to know.
Yeah, I was going to say sanctuaries as well, that, you know, there's no world certification on what a rescue animal is or what a sanctuary is. And so, you know, hotels will have a kinkajou or a monkey or a primate in their hotel lobby and say, oh, it's rescued. And if you ask them like, well, where was it rescued from? And they go, well, just the outside. And it's very dangerous in the jungle. So if we let them go, it's very dangerous for them. And like, surely it is, but that is nature. It is dangerous. We've all seen wildlife documentaries and cried because nature is dangerous. I think, and yeah, there's a lot of sanctuaries out there that unfortunately say they're sanctuaries, have realized people do vote with their dollars, and so want to go and support really great places, and so they see sanctuary, they go, but these animals have been stolen from the wild. And so a really great way that you can sort of vet sanctuaries is you can ask like 2 questions. You can say, where are the animals from and when will they be released? And then you can also ask if you're allowed to touch them. And if the people say, oh, no, of course not. How could you touch them? They're a sanctuary. These are wild animals. Then they're good. It's a little cheeky. But if someone goes, well, like normally I would say you can't touch them, but come this way, then you know it's not a real sanctuary. It is not good. This has happened a few times that I've been like, oh, I wonder if I can. Oh no, disappointing. Really great, amazing sanctuaries. There's many different certifications, but if you do ask for their release rates, they'll be really proud of them. Sometimes release rates with wildlife is quite small. Wild animals are very stoic and the outside is dangerous. And so if an animal is able to be caught by a human to be rehabilitated, it's already not doing great. And a lot of animals get very stressed in rehabilitative care. And so if you ask to see the release rates, the veterinarian or whoever you're talking to will say, it's this %, which doesn't look awesome, but it's this many, and that's amazing. And so you just have to like, just understand the context is bigger. If they're releasing animals, that's wonderful, and that's what you want to see. And again, they'll be very proud. And you can see, even if it's not a great percentage, if they're so proud, maybe there's a bigger story, and you can ask them about that.
Yeah, that's a good. We generally say like if you can get a lot closer to an animal in a sanctuary than you can in the wild, then it's usually not doing it the right way. Like if you can get close enough to take a selfie with a tiger, then there's probably something going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. And consent is important, right? Like if you are getting that close to a tiger, it doesn't want that. That's because something's going on. It's not consenting to it. It doesn't like you.
Well, this leads great into our next question from Ian. I watched the documentary Blood Lions, which exposed the canned hunting industry in South Africa, which in part relies on tourists to visit and volunteer for lion cub petting. Do you think there's a way to interact ethically with captive wild predators?
No. Unfortunately, there isn't, right? And I think this happens. You know, travel used to look a certain way, and we used to feel like we were messaging in travel before we were born, like way back in travel. The world is yours to explore, and animals are yours to ride, and it's for you. And this is how also like dolphin swimming happened. That like someone saw a friend that was swimming with a dolphin and said, "Well, I want to do that, and if they get to, then I get to." And unfortunately, this happens with tigers in Southeast Asia, with as Ian said, lions in South Africa. That your friend got to touch a lion. Well, I want to touch a lion, but they're not domesticated species. They're not dogs. They didn't co-evolve with us. They are afraid of humans because we are the most dangerous game. We are predators, and so there's unless they have been habituated through not excellent means by breaking and terrible things that happen to elephants and lions and tigers, then they don't want to be around, and it's very stressful. And so if you are around them and they are comfortable, it means it happened not ethically, and it means that your time and money and pictures at this place are bringing it legitimacy. And this one lion is going to be other lions, and that's why we have a canned lion. Horrible travesty that's going on right now. So unfortunately, no, there is not. There are amazing sanctuaries. The amazing ones are not ones that you can go and scritch a lion.
What about other animals? Like in terms of interactions, like the first one that comes to mind is like Elephant Nature Park in Chiang Mai in Thailand, which is probably, I would say, would be the most ethically ran and conscious like elephant sanctuary in Thailand.
I don't think they let you touch the elephants anymore. I thought when we visited a few years ago, you could go up and like pet the elephants, and they were doing bathing as well. But I feel like they've since changed that. And unless you're volunteering there, I don't think you have a physical interaction with the animal. But I could be incorrect.
This is actually an excellent point, because elephant sanctuaries have wonderfully evolved in the time since they started. So we used to think that elephants are very big and they can carry people. Awesome. But then we realized elephants are wild animals, and they are they have to be broken for us to ride them. Mm-hmm. We also realized that biologically, elephants, it's really bad for them to have weight on their back. They're more like pulley creatures. So like they have really strong shoulders, but their vertebrae are very, very vulnerable. So we said, we humans, not AEI, humans realized, we shouldn't be riding them. We shouldn't be using them. We shouldn't be riding them. It's all exploitation. So these elephant sanctuaries started, and they said, well, they've already been broken. They've already been socialized. And you know what? Swimming with elephants is really cool, because they do need to be, bathed because they have really sensitive skin. But then we realized humans and elephants get kind of the same dermatitis. We get itchy skin. And so swimming with them actually trades itchy skin back and forth. And that's not as excellent for elephants. Also, it's inherently dangerous to be swimming with a couple tons of elephant. They have very little eyes. They can
also be emotionally unstable, because they've had such hardship in the past because of the broken-in process and where they came from.
Yeah. And so like you are taking this huge animal and you are saying, oh yeah, please crowd around it. Please go swimming. Do all these things. And we realized that's not great either. And so elephant sanctuaries backed up and said, okay, no more swimming. We have swimming holes for elephants to go in. And there's less and less and less interaction, because and this is another great thing about sanctuaries, like it's evolving. We don't know what we don't know. But once we do know something, we go, oh, this is actually not great. And so we're all learning, we're all in a journey together. But when you have seen pictures before of people swimming with elephants and it looks like a magical, great experience, now you know it's not great anymore. So maybe you did it before, but that was before we knew it wasn't a great thing. But now it's 2020. We don't need to swim with elephants. That's not a thing that they need. And yeah, if you look at the domestication of animals and the co-evolution of animals, who is okay to be around humans? It's cats and it's dogs, and there's some farm animals and they're kind of cool with it. But everything else, if you have to break an animal to make it be okay with hanging out with you, not great.
Yeah, I'd say the only thing that we've seen that might come close to a ethically interaction with animals, and obviously it depends on your definition of interaction, right? If it's petting or if it's just being in the presence of, is when we did gorilla trekking in the DRC, or some people go in Rwanda. I guess that experience to us was a very good interaction, which we felt was very minimally invasive to the animals. Didn't obviously involve breaking, it's just more of accustomed to. So it's habituated in the sense of being in the presence of, and from our understanding, and obviously this is not our area of expertise, it obviously those income, those dollars from tourism, because it is quite expensive to go on these tours, really does help save the gorillas there, because a lot of those areas, if not, they would just be killed, or the rainforest would be cut down and mined for oil. So that's one of the experiences we think we've experienced, where it is we feel an ethically sustainable thing, because they have extremely strong limits both on time, location, rotation, and that's what we felt was probably the only sustainable interaction with animals, other than being in a safari vehicle and seeing a lion.
And there's a lot of those, right? A lot of great wildlife experiences where you're not interacting with captive animals, where you're interacting with wild animals. And that's, your safaris, you can be diving and swimming with sharks without ever touching anything. And those are just our favorite ways to interact and to be in presence of animals.
And it's consent, right? Like, those animals consent to coming up to you, and they can also leave at any time. So if you
and they do.
Yeah, and that's why it's so incredibly magical to see animals in the wild, because it's not guaranteed, and you can sit for hours and wait for the gorillas to come, and maybe they will, and maybe they'll come really close to the person that is 100 meters down the line from you, and they're not going to come close to you. That's just how it works, and we and that's why these slow, really authentic interactions feel so much better than the gross interactions of like, oh, this animal's in a cage, now I'm gonna stick my hand in. Cool, I touched the animal.
Yeah, so we have a lot of amazing questions. There are a lot of great topics. I want to stick with the animal ones just for a second, because there's one that's just come in. What's your take on zoos that advocate for breeding for survival of the species and research, like Disney's Animal Kingdom? The example is that Disney's Animal Kingdom has a program where they breed gorillas for the species. Is it good or bad? So I want to hear your thoughts about zoos.
We don't go into zoos, we don't promote zoos, and we don't visit zoos.
I think that their zoos were an excellent model 100 years ago, and they were super important in bringing back a number of species, because that is where we had a whole bunch, like the collective knowledge of conservationists and of veterinarians and of people that just loved these species. But just like elephant sanctuaries, I think we should be evolving, and we can do better. If zoos went away, those veterinarians and those conservationists wouldn't go away. There would be other places that we could all get together and figure out how to save these species. We don't have to.
It was probably good at that time as well, just to add to what you're saying, in terms of education for people that maybe didn't have a TV, because TVs didn't exist. So it might have been educational to see some of these animals up front. Now everyone can see a lot of things and can learn a lot of things, and they don't actually have to go to a zoo to see an elephant or many of these other animals.
And like almost every child on Earth goes through an obsession with dinosaurs because they're cool, and no one has ever seen a dinosaur.
Jurassic Park, all right? Come on.
Okay, well, Jurassic Park's a real place. But I think animals just need to get the PR team behind dinosaurs, because they're amazing and they're so great, and we've never actually we didn't have to put them into cages. So again, I think people are smarter and better than that. We don't need to capture animals and say, this is the only way you'll see it and the only way you'll protect it and be interested. I think we're better than that.
I think we need to break that system as well. And by doing that, if people really do, if it is their lifelong passion to go and see the gorillas or something like that, then they'll prioritize experiences that do it ethically and do it the right way, and then also help contribute to conservation. And so that's the model that we should be really promoting.
Yeah, and
one example. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to say one good example that we recently saw on our visit to Southern Africa is we were in Namibia, and we met a couple there who, this lady was fascinated with cheetahs. It was absolutely her number one thing. She was a fanatic, And she saved up for many years to come and spend a few nights at Namibia's largest cheetah conservation, where I think they have like a quarter of the world's cheetahs there, and it's a huge research center, and it's not really a public thing. It's not a zoo or anything like that. And she emailed and talked with the coordinator.
She's a biologist.
Yeah, and then she's really spent her whole many years getting excited to do that. And she went there and experienced something that was very special, which will live with her for the rest of her life, rather than just going to her local zoo and maybe seeing a cheetah there. Yeah. So she actually got that experience, and she worked towards, she saved up, and she actually made it something that was special to her.
And what do you want to see? You want to see one of the fastest land animals in a 6-foot cage, or you want to see it like streaming across the Sahara? You know what I mean? Like these are better experiences anyway. They just take a bit more work, and we usually go the easy option, which we're going to reverse.
And we all love travel, right? Like we all love getting on a plane and going to a different place and like experiencing that place around us. We could, I was going to be really mean. I love reading. There's nothing wrong with books, but we could learn tons of things and never have to travel again because we just read books all the time. We can go on Google Earth and we can go through, we can walk through Petra and then go tick. I don't actually have to go there. But and that's good, but it does feel a bit cheap, and it does feel a bit just not what I want. I want to see things with my own eyes where they're supposed to be. And that's the same with zoos, right? Like I could go see, Jules, like you were saying, a cheetah and go, okay, well, I ticked it off my list, but I want to see it run and I want to see it where it's supposed to live.
Yeah, it's just not really natural to see animals caged up and living in places where they're not meant to live. It's not really an educational experience. I think it's far more educational if you can't afford to like fly to Africa to see animals, is to watch like a nature documentary. There's so many that are available for streaming, Planet Earth, to show, especially like when it comes to kids and education, to show them how they actually live. Keeping animals in zoos and in cages, it's it's a very human-centric way of, we have control over the earth. Like we've put these animals here, and even if you are going to breed them to keep the breed alive, like what's the point if it can never be released back into nature? And I don't know like too many zoos where that's the goal, is to like breed a whole bunch of like giraffes and then release them to the wild. It just doesn't really happen, especially if you're in a different continent. Like how are you gonna get it back over to Africa? Like it doesn't really make any sense. So, I mean, saving up and actually going to the places themselves, plus when you actually travel to somewhere in Africa to see animals, you are helping the local economy, you're helping people not turn to poaching, you're helping conservation, and it all works together. So yeah. So let's move away briefly from the topic of animals. We have so many great questions here. We don't have time for all of them, unfortunately. Let's talk about this one. I'd love to hear, what are the best ways you could all advise travelers to interact and connect with local communities?
So I think there's a couple different ways to do it. So what we like to do is just go to a place, get on local transportation, and start talking to people. Obviously, there are some barriers to that if you don't know the language, or if you're, shy or introverted, it can be kind of scary. So if you're not into that style of spontaneously meeting locals, there are so many platforms that you can go on that can help you connect with the local community and develop friendships. You can go on couch surfing. You can stay with locals, or they often have meetups where you can just go to a bar, or, a sports game or whatever, and they'll have hosted events where you can meet other locals. There's Facebook groups. Obviously, Travel Massive is a great way to meet other travelers. And yeah, there's so many ways to just go and connect with others and do it in a respectful way where you truly want to learn about their culture and develop a friendship with somebody from that destination.
Those are, super great ideas. I think, the internet has blessed us in all of these ways that we can meet people before we meet them. I think Airbnb experiences are also really great if you are a bit nervous about, finding someone on Facebook or being part of a big group. That could be sort of your first foot in the door, that you meet up with a local guide to climb a local mountain, or go through a coffee experience, or do a a cultural walking tour of an area. I know a lot of major cities around the world have free walking tours, and they're often led by students and just by people that just want to like chat and hang out with tourists. So starting with that and starting with something that, oh, this is really interesting. I want to climb a mountain. I also want to learn about cultural things. And then also you get to meet a friend and say, well, I'll take you out for a beer or coffee or tea after. And then that's your in.
Yeah, there's a lot of companies out there that offer that local guide experience, where, like you guys have said, you can connect with the local guide, and sometimes we'll do it through a company, sometimes we'll just show up at a small kind of a B&B and ask the owner, do you know any local guides that can show us around? And they'll just come and they'll take us on these. It's not a tour. It's not an organized tour. There's no kind of agenda. They'll be like, what do you want to do? Well, take us to some places to eat, and they'll take you to brother's, sister's favorite restaurant, whatever. And you just meet the people that run it, and you get to interact with people that are eating there. And it becomes a more authentic sort of a friend taking you out experience rather than this organized mass group getaway.
It definitely starts with, I think, choosing where you stay. When you go to a destination, you can stay at big hotels, and their front desk lobby is not going to be very helpful because their clientele is usually looking for a specific type of experience. But it's also the area that you stay in. There's lots of different cities you can go to where you can stay in the developed business district, or you can maybe stay in one of the up and coming districts, the artist district. Just going to that artist district that's maybe experiencing gentrification, that's kind of coming up from what used to be maybe an old poor area to now becoming an artsy area with lots of crafts and artists, that could be a good experience for you in the segue to kind of experience some of the emerging cultures of these places. So it's really not just going to destination, finding a guide where you choose to stay and trying to choose neighborhoods that aren't, Fifth Avenue. Yeah. It's a bit more underdeveloped and looking for that growth.
Hey guys, I'm back. Really amazing session. We filled up that hour so easily, right? And we were worried we might run short.
Q&A could continue for hours.
Hours. I mean, super insightful. I mean, everything you guys talked about, I think, really helpful for the audience that was watching, and for those that want to rewatch afterwards as well. So, I mean, thank you, Lauren, for hosting. Oksana, Max, Nora, Jules, and Christine, thank you so much for being part of the panel. Like I said, we will be posting the replay on the event page on Travel Massive, so look out for that in maybe 24 to 48 hours. The next Toronto chapter event is on August 20th, where we'll be talking about how to build your brand using Pinterest. So look out for that and register. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you guys soon.
Thanks for having us.